Welcome to Clarity in Action. This is the show where we have real conversations that are going to challenge your perspectives and drive real action. So if you are tired of holding back and you're ready to make bold moves, this is the show for you. Join us as we are going to take you from confusion into clarity. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Clarity in Action. If you follow me, you know I am all about high performance and how to be high performing without burning yourself or the rest of your team out. And so much of becoming high performing is in how we show up daily, not just physically, also mentally. Are we showing up as the best version of ourselves so that we can give our best to others? Because when we can show up as our best, it has a ripple effect in everything that we do. And to help me with this conversation, I have an amazing guest. He is a fantastic, strong, bold, making moves leadership coach. So, Jon Sheldon, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Claire. It's so great to have. It's real great to be here.
I am really excited for this conversation. One of the things that you talk about is helping teams operate in both execution and alignment and living in a state of radical honesty. Why is this so important in helping us to deliver results?
Whew. Well, the radical honesty really comes in because most people are lying is a bad word, I guess, to put it, but are oftentimes not telling their authentic truth in conversations. We're always super concerned with how the other person's going to perceive, and while obviously tonality, what we say really obviously matters, but oftentimes, and have you ever read the book by Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference?
Love that book. I just referred some people to it yesterday.
Love that book, right? One of the first lines in like the first chapters, the negotiation starts at no. And that's such a simple line, but it's something that I think people can get a really deep sense of purpose, not really purpose, but knowledge behind of. Like, that's where this radical honesty doesn't stem from, but it really solidified that as well. Of like, most of the time, we're not just being honest with ourselves, we're not being honest with other people and what we truly desire and want, what we really think about decisions on the team, outside of the team, um, the vision for where we're going, name it, right? And oftentimes we're placating what we're talking about to whoever we are, whether that's our partner, whether that's our business associate, one of our team members, right? We're always trying to get more to the middle first instead of actually saying what we truly want. And that's where that radical honesty piece comes in. And a lot of times having a third party like myself involved in teams opens up. It's weird, honestly. I never really thought that would be the case, but I do a lot of I do a lot of team calls, and I work with
Mhm.
a lot of teams, and it's funny how, we'll have, like, a normal conversation, and you'll get feedback like, "Man, that was so great." No one ever talks like that, and I think just having an extra person in the room sometimes opens up the dialogue to be more authentic, to be more honest, because if we're not operating from that space and, like, as one of the pillars of how we operate a team, then we're not starting with truth, we're starting with fiction.
Exactly. Yeah, really great way to put it. So take me back a little bit on when you first realized that helping people to show up and be honest with their identity, it wasn't just about personal development, but it's actually the foundation for high performance.
Um, so back in the day, crazy to say now, was 20 years ago. I was a Marine infantry squad leader, and did two deployments to Iraq. And why I bring that up is that's where this really system of defining performance blueprints and bringing out the best in people really came from. I think that most people think of Marine Corps leadership as screaming, yelling, do what I say, etc. And the best leaders, not only in the Marines but outside, don't do that at all. It's understanding how you not only operate internally and what type of leader you want to be, but also how your team operates. And we have to start with that. We have to start with the basis of how they operate at their best individually before we can truly, in my opinion, lead them effectively. And so that internal piece of the leadership, that internal processing, that internal performance really needs to be identified. And in the work that I started doing, I understood pretty quickly that in corporate America, this just wasn't happening,
Yeah.
right? In small teams, this just wasn't happening. It's, hey, I got promoted to leadership and now I'm basically a leader, but really you're a sales manager and you read a couple leadership books. And that's not to like, you know,
Mhm.
be mean to anybody, but that is kind of the truth, right? And they don't even understand a lot of times how they perform at their best, how they want to be leading. And we have to take obviously examples from the best, like John Maxwell's and the Jocko Willings,
Mhm.
the Chris Williamsons, right? All of these guys are amazing. Um, the Mel Robbins, right? Like, and I love them all, but we also have to take that and start defining how we actually operate, not
Yeah,
only as a performance leader, but as just a leader in general, whether it's in or outside of our teams. So the internal
definitely.
factor really came from that, of like understanding my guys back in the day, then realizing
Mhm.
that there's a bigger problem when you get out of things like the Marines, which is a little bit more structured, a lot of it focused on leadership.
Yeah. One of the things that you this reminds me of is, so many times we go to work, we work for a leader, and we kind of live by their expectations of us.
Yep.
So, how does a person even know what being their best even looks like when they are generally performing based upon somebody else's expectations of them?
Yeah, you just nailed it right on the head. It is this expectation. It is driven by this external force. Most of the time, this is kind of a cop out answer, but it's the truth. Nobody ever actually takes the time to think about it. Right?
Mhm.
You meet with a leader and they've done countless hours of personal development and countless seminars, but when was the last time they took half of a day and actually focused in on what type of leader they want to be, not what somebody on the stage is telling them to be, not what their manager or their owner of their company is telling them to be. So it starts with taking the time. And
Mhm.
then I've have specific questions and workshops that I've built, and this isn't a sales pitch. This is just answering your question on getting through that. And there's four main topics that I encourage leaders and high performers to identify within themselves, and that I've personally seen the best performers that I know all have figured out in some way, shape, or form. And that is, what is their purpose, their individual purpose, not their business purpose. Everyone always gets that mixed up. Their vision, their ecosystem they actually thrive in, and what actually motivates them. When they figure out those four things, what I've noticed is the high performers have that figured out. They've taken the
Yeah.
time to figure that out.
Mhm. For sure. One of the other questions I want to ask is, because knowing this is so key, are there certain signs that somebody can reflect on that might key them into, oh, I'm not in alignment, or what does it feel like when they are in alignment?
Mm. Yeah. Um, I think each one of those things has something a little bit different of being in or out of alignment. It's a great question. I think when you're feeling busy or burnt out, I think that's one of those things where you're probably not aligned with either your purpose or your vision. You're probably highly motivated. You might be have a great ecosystem and you're really grinding it out, but you don't feel attachment. I think that's a key thing right there, that you're maybe missing a piece of your blueprint. Um, when you feel like your work, you have a direction, you have your ecosystem, you're thriving, but it just doesn't. You still feel kind of hollow. I think that you're missing a little bit of purpose, right? When you know what you want to do and where you want to go, you're motivated to do it, but everything feels like heavy. That means you're kind of missing some piece of your ecosystem. And when everything feels like it should be great, but you just aren't motivated to do it and just can't do it, you're just missing a big piece of your motivator or your motivation. And
Yeah,
I think that's one of the bigger things on just a whole level, is when most people know when they feel out of alignment. They
they
just do.
do. They don't
They
they
just
don't always acknowledge it. It's going back to that radical
right.
honesty is I think, so many times we are in it for so much longer before we acknowledge it. We try
Yes.
to fix it. We're like that salmon swimming against the stream, the current. We try to fit into it, even though we know it's not the right fit.
Exactly, and exactly, and
Do
what
you think
most
it's
people.
because we see it as a failure? We see it as
Yes.
not that I'm out of alignment, but oh, I'm missing something or I must be failing.
Yeah, I think that's a huge piece of it, and that's why people go down these massive rabbit holes. And what they end up doing, at least from my interpretation, is they'll double down on the wrong thing.
Hmm.
They'll say, like, again, I came from a background of, the Marines, and then I was in finance for 14 years. And in financial planning, like, and probably sales in general, it's like, well, go call more people.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess that might solve something, but how many times can you say that before you realize that that's not the answer?
Yeah.
Or talk to different people, or call it whatever it is. Go spend more money on marketing or PR, and you're just not there. But that's not what it is, and you just nailed it. Truthfully, is like we sometimes that sometimes this word adaptation isn't used enough. Of like,
Mhm.
you need to be able to adapt and realize you're adapting. Out of alignment, then comes action, but after action needs to come adaptation. And a lot of times people aren't, again, taking the time to sit back and say, what is working? What isn't working? Where do I need to adapt? Even if this was 100% a part of the plan, does it connect to what I'm actually growing?
Yeah.
Do I feel good about it? And I spent a long time in my life not even worrying about that. I'm very transparent about that. Like, it was grind, make a lot of money, live a cool life,
Hmm.
and totally out of alignment with what I would have considered my purpose today,
Yeah.
but still stuck in that game of like, oh, it'll all just work out. It'll all just work out.
Yeah.
And once I gave myself a little bit of grace, Clara, to understand I need to adapt, and adapting isn't failing, then my mindset massively changed, and so did my life.
Absolutely. And I think, it's not just on a personal level. I think it can also be on an organizational level. A company starts, they have an identity, they're in a certain way, but as they evolve, I don't think enough organizations take time for the adaptation,
Nope.
because many times the people that they had, as they grow, they were perfect. They were a perfect fit in alignment for the
Mhm.
company they were, but not necessarily the company they're going to be. And I think leaders try to hold on to those people, even though it's time to maybe part ways, and talk about what holding on to the old way, not adapting, how is that going to impact not just the bottom line, but the culture itself?
Oh, I mean, I noticed this, not to call out an industry, but I noticed this a lot in technology, in the tech
Hmm.
space, where first off, I was told by my buddy who's been in tech for 15 years now. Like, basically, if you stay at a company, he's a sales guy. Like, you stay at a company longer than 4 years, the rest of the industry is like, what's wrong with you? Like, why haven't
Hmm.
you moved on to something different? But also, in that same vein, that's a form of adaptation. But for the company standard too, what you see is when they get this massive growth and they never change, again, personnel, they never change sales goals, and they're like,
Hmm.
yeah, you should grow by 300% every year. How is that even possible? Like, does Coca-Cola think that? You were
Yeah.
a company of 15 and now you're a company of 500. Why do you still have those same goals? Because they're still stuck, like you just talked about. They haven't, again, taken
Mhm.
that time to
Yeah.
identify that and come to the realization that, yeah, life changes, the business changes, right? Scale, grow. Some people that served you don't need to serve you anymore. And some things that served you from the beginning, you need to remember to go back to that as well. And I think it's, again, that analysis and that radical honesty that we talked about, of being open and saying, what is bet? You know what? I'll go back to the Marines for a second. This mission first mentality. Like, what is the mission? And
Mhm.
do I have the right gear? Do I have the right personnel by it? Because I'll tell you what, when life matters, you just make decisions that are best for everybody coming home.
Yeah.
You don't care if, like, hey, I got to sit out this mission, or hey, I can't bring this type of weapon or this type of equipment. You don't care. It's what's the best for the mission. And I think companies and people need to understand that too. Of,
Mhm.
do we have that identified first off?
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's so true. And I think, just again, having those honest conversations with your team, because it's okay. It's okay if they're not in alignment anymore. It's
Hmm.
not a bad thing, and stop fighting with it, and just understanding it's just time of growth. And one of my very favorite quotes is from Robin Sharma. He says that, when you're going through change, it's scary at first, it's messy in the middle, and it's glorious at the end. When people are going through this and they are uncovering and starting to really tap into this, it can be very messy, because
Absolutely.
there, some people may not like it, some people may not understand it, they might be trying to pull them back. So how do you coach someone through that messy time to keep them in it, to keep them going forward, understanding that this is just part of the process and it will get better.
Yeah, I think not to be a broken record, but that's one of the first things I do is identify what their personal blueprint is. It's a big
Yeah.
piece of my coaching business. And so
Mhm.
and there's a couple reasons for that. And the first one is it helps us make decisions in the tough times.
Yeah.
This is a question I get all the time about my time in the Marine Corps is how did you make decisions in the moment when you're in a firefight? It's like,
Mhm.
wow, it's hard to look back at those times. But it goes based on operating systems. You knew a decision making model. You knew the end goal of the mission. You knew what your priorities were. You knew where your people are. And if you have all the data that we've already figured out, then you go back to the structured operating system of how do we clearly move through, and stick to the plan, and that simplifies it. And any way that we can simplify the messy, especially in the messy times,
Yeah.
anytime we can simplify it with some sort of decision making structure, in my opinion, where we can get clear really, really quickly on is this the right decision? Do I have what I need for it? I call it clarity, condition, and cost. Am I clear on what I need to do? Um, am I in the condition to do it?
Mhm.
And am I prepared to pay the cost for this in the
Yeah.
moment? And you can answer that really, really quickly. And as long as you know what those things back up into, decisions become honestly a lot easier and you
Yeah.
gain confidence. And that's where
Mhm.
people really struggle in that messy time is they start to lose confidence in the most dangerous time to lose confidence when
Yeah.
things aren't going perfectly.
So take those three concepts and take it from a leadership perspective with their team. How can they use those three things in talking with and coaching and leading their team so their team can help to self discover?
Absolutely. Yeah. So that first question is clarity, right? So
Mhm.
are we clear? Are you clear on what? So take a decision. So we need to. I don't like doing like increased revenue or something like that, but give it an objective and say, okay, there it is. Are we 100% certain on what this and how this is clear in the decision you're going to make to our overall vision and our mission for what we're trying to accomplish? Is it clear? Do we
Yeah.
have a clear path forward? Because again, in that messy times, it seems like an easy thing to do sitting in a chair listening to a podcast, but when you're in it, it becomes a lot more challenging to get clear. So get clear with your team. Ask them
Mhm.
those important questions, right? Challenge them on that. Have them force and back it up. One of the things that I love teaching people is just simple saying, prove it. All right, you're clear. Great. Prove it. Explain it to me. Explain it to me like you've never even talked to me before about it. Awesome. Now you check in with condition. We call that a gear check. Do you have everything you need in order to complete this clarity, like to get to the end of the decision, like to actually complete it and have them list it out? It doesn't take long. Generally speaking, if you get good at this, this is like a 90-second to 3-minute conversation. So you teach your people what to do and how to make these clear decisions in the moment. And then you stop getting the phone calls, you stop getting the hesitation or waiting for Friday to bring it up at a call. Like you teach them to go through these steps, empower them to make it, and they'll do it. But you do a condition check. What do you need? Do you need me? Do you need other people? Do you need resources? Do you need technology? Do you need a system or an environment? Like, what do you actually need to complete this? And then the most important one, in my opinion, is you have to accept the cost of what it's going to take. And most people don't do that enough.
Nope. They're
And
not
getting
honest
people,
about that, and
oh,
they may not be willing to pay the cost because again, there is always a cost. And being honest of are you willing to do that or not? That's a big question.
it's a big question. And you're right. People don't assess the cost. And that's what, because they don't want to face it. They don't want to face that something could potentially go wrong. And if it goes wrong, what are you going to do? It's a contingency plan.
Mhm.
Like they don't do that because they're scared to face that truth that this isn't going to go perfectly or it might not. But in actually addressing the cost up front, you mentally already pay it.
Mhm.
And that's really what drives confidence. People totally miss that.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
just the first 2 steps, it's accepting the cost. That's what drives confidence. Oh,
Mhm.
okay, well, if everything goes to shit, sorry. If everything's done, right, and it's terrible, what's the worst case scenario? Okay, accept it and then start moving.
Exactly. Yeah, I really love those three questions. I think both on a personal as well as for a leader to do with their team, because again, the vision can change or some of those things. So we have to make sure, because if we're not all clear, how can we move forward? So I think those are really strong. So let me ask you this. If somebody is listening to this and all of a sudden they're kind of like, oh, this sounds like me. Maybe I haven't been showing up as my best. Maybe I'm out of alignment. But they're like, this is so overwhelming. What is just one thing? What is the one place that they should start? Maybe that one question or that one thing they should journal on.
Yeah. The it goes back to this word purpose for me. I think that when we connect ourselves to the purpose of not only what our purpose is, but what our business purpose is, what our decision purpose is, like that word purpose, I think matters a lot.
Yeah.
Um, and to get really clear on that, I think that's the one thing that I would start journaling on if they're like, man, this all sounds great, but like, where do I start? It's like, yeah, I'm not talking about the purpose. I'm not talking about necessarily like Simon Sinek's like Start with Why. I'm not necessarily,
Right.
and it's a phenomenal book, but I'm not necessarily talking about that. I'm talking about like the deep down, like, what are you trying to do? Just list it out and
Mhm.
start there, because a lot of this is really just disseminating facts in our brain and getting overwhelmed. Right. Just like you said, I can't figure this out. Okay, take the
Yeah.
time to do it. So the first step
Mhm.
I would say is schedule the time, hold the time sacred. Most people reschedule. I have clients that do this. It drives me crazy. Hey, did you think on that thing? No, it's something. No, 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 no. This has to be like an appointment. This has to be like a meeting, right? You set the time and actually stay in it and bathe in what I call bathe in your fear.
Yeah.
Understand what that means. Connect it back to your purpose. That would be the absolute down and dirty first step I would do.
Love it. Oh my God, John, I could just talk to you for hours and there's so many things that I could just, really dive deeper in. So I'm going to have to call you and talk to you offline sometime. But I would love for you to share, you've built a great business. I know that you're, still so much more you want to do. So what is something that you're working on now or what's next for John?
Yeah, so what's next for me is I'm really getting into I'm really diving into like the workshop and keynote space. I'm trying to develop this online community around this exact topic. It's going to be called well, we're still in I can't even I don't even it's going to be called Cover Me. Um, and what it really is almost exactly what we talked about. It's kind of came from this thing called the Belleauwood creed that I've created, which simple, super simple. It's the creed for my business. It's because I said I would, I faced my obstacles and they became the way. I learned my enemy, it was me. And I remembered that I must die, and so I live.
Mm,
And for me, that represents what the Cover Me thing is all about, of speaking your truth, owning your obstacles, understanding internally what's going wrong, and living every day to your best. And so that's what I've been working on too, is an extension of that creed to a community, that people share ideas without judgment, that are there to support each other on real everyday stuff that's super quick and intentional. And so we don't need to spend 90-minute focus sessions every Friday. We can do a quick check-in and get refocused, kind of like, actually you led into that point perfectly. Like, what can people do in the moment?
Perfect. Oh my God, I love that. John, thank you so much for being here. Really great items. I love your blueprint. I love those three questions. I have one final thought for you, and you might have just answered this, but sitting where you sit today, learning everything you've learned up to this point, how do you define success for yourself?
Oof. I was challenged by, it's so funny you're asking. I was challenged by a client on this about 3 weeks ago. Success to me has changed a lot over time. Um, but right now I know when I'm getting there, when I feel more peaceful. I
Mm,
think that's hard to explain.
mm,
Um, I know what it feels like, but
yeah.
that's now my definition of success. I've had a really busy career to this point in time, and I'm still getting busier, and it has nothing to do with that. But the sense of peace is what I define as success. Sometimes sitting in my backyard with my wife on a Sunday afternoon, that's the most successful that I feel.
Awesome. I love it. Well, John, thank you so much. I wish you all the best in your continued endeavors. I can't wait to learn more about your Cover Me when that comes out. I think that is fantastic. And again, just thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Claire. It was awesome.